Recently, nvidia dropped the graphics driver that enables DXR and ray tracing on older graphics cards from the GTX lineup, such as the GTX 1060, so you can now activate DXR and ray tracing on this GTX 1060. With that said, is it worth activating? And how much of performance hit do you actually take by activating it? In this video, we're gonna take a look at this. Let's dig into it. Have you tried ray tracing yet on GTX? Let me know in the comments below. Hey, what is going on, guys? It's Robin here. Very nice to meet you. Today we're going to test ray tracing on GTX cards from nvidia. So recently nvidia came out with shocking news that GTX cards will get support for ray tracing. Now remember, this has since the beginning been locked down feature to RTX cards only, but yeah, not any longer. So for all you folks out there that have been raging for this to happen, well, it finally did. What I'm most curious about is to see how much of a difference the RT cores or ray tracing cores and tensor cores actually plays here. Remember, a big part of RTX cards is the ray tracing cores and the tensor cores that the RTX cards has that enables these cards to handle these incredibly complex light rays in a very effective way, something that is completely missing on GTX cards, and that was one of the major things that Jensen was pushing so hard on the keynote when nvidia first announced RTX for the first time.
Everything just works.
nvidia was stressing the complexity of rendering light rays in real time. So what happens if you throw ray tracing cores out of the window? Yeah, that is the question we're going to answer here. Now we got a total of 3 cards to work with today. The 1060, this one from nvidia with 6 gigs of VRAM. We also got the 1660 Ti, this one from MSI based on Turing should be added. Again, both are lacking any sort of ray tracing acceleration, such as ray tracing cores and tensor cores. Finally, we have this RTX 2060, which has all the bells and whistles that nvidia claims makes ray tracing a satisfying experience. Now, there's a lot to say about this, whether it's cool or not to lock features such as DXR to specific cards. nvidia has been doing this sort of exclusivity for years, and it's not really something new. It is obviously not good for the consumers. Any sort of exclusivities, it's not any good, guys. I'm not happy about it, and my hopes is that we can get to an end where these graphics exclusives such as physics and hairworks simply get thrown out of the window completely. I don't want to be a part of it. Actually, I'm very tired of it, and I honestly think it makes the gaming more harm than good, to be honest. Anyway, I've been testing ray tracing on GTX cards. Now if you want to try this yourself, you can find information down below what requirements is needed. Obviously you need the latest graphics driver for it to work to begin with. And also, there's only a handful of games that support DXR as of right now. Now, something we need to address here is that although the driver does enable DXR in games, it doesn't enable DLSS or Deep Learning Super Sample, which is an anti-aliasing technique that is part of DXR as well. This is simply due to the fact that DLSS is purely relying on tensor cores, which the GTX cards are lacking completely. With that said, there's not a whole lot of games supporting DXR or ray tracing at the current state. We got 3 titles that does this pretty well right now. This is Battlefield 5, we got Metro Exodus, and we got Tomb Raider, or Shadow of the Tomb Raider I should say. We're gonna be focusing on 2 titles in this video, Metro and Battlefield. Let's start by looking at Metro Exodus. What can you expect when activating DXR on a GTX 1060 card, for example? Shocking or not, it's not a pleasant experience, I tell you that. Here's a side-by-side comparison. You got ray tracing or DXR activated on the left hand side and inactivated on the right side. As you can see, it doesn't look much like a game right now, and this is kind of like the problem here as well. See, one could think that we're pushing the graphics way too high here, and while you're totally right about that, we are looking at 100% GPU load here. Now what you do need to understand is that we are running with the lowest graphics settings also, with the only thing being turned on basically is ray tracing. And this is the problem, because if you turn DXR off, you will notice that we all of a sudden get a pretty pleasant gaming experience experience again. The scenario pretty much repeats itself with the 1660 Ti also, and while we do see an increase of at least 10 average FPS on the same settings, I'm sorry to say, but it's far from playable. Metro only lets you choose between either high or ultra when adjusting the levels of ray tracing intensity, and high is simply too intense for both the 1060 and the 1660 Ti, pure simple. A medium or low preset would have been necessary here to perhaps make it something worth playing with, and at this point it's not even a debate. It's just a slideshow, and quite honestly, it is pretty damn disappointing, and even the RTX 2060 struggles at times, which makes this a tad bit pathetic in my opinion. I have made a video in the past where I talked about the 2060 and how it feels like, I don't know, if this card doesn't make any sense. Yeah, anyway, let's jump over to Battlefield 5. Now, we know Battlefield 5 had pretty significant DXR issues at launch, but DICE has since then been working hard on it, and today BF5 offers a pretty nice experience with DXR activated. Now, like Metro, we have plenty of options here, and you do notice a difference between low and high when activating DXR, as low simply scales down the reflections to levels where it sometimes look a bit ugly, but overall I'm very impressed with having DXR activated in this game, all in all. But yeah, what about DXR on GTX then? Is it even possible? Well, to my surprise, it actually is, though at times when there is a lot of reflections and water and basically a great amount of DXR activity on screen, so to speak, the frame rate tanks on both the 1060 and the 1660, and although the 1660 does a better job in this department, I wouldn't call it smooth gameplay. So with the numbers in mind, is it worth it? Well, let's put it like this. Now, while I do think it's very nice of Nvidia finally trying to become a better and more honest and likable company, they've done a couple of things here that is worth mentioning. First, they opened up physics, and physics is now open source, and yeah, that is a good thing. Then they decided to enable G-Sync on FreeSync monitors, which is also very nice, and now they're enabling DXR on GTX cards, and so this is a step in the right direction, and I think they deserve some credit for it. Running DXR on GTX cards is unfortunately nothing but a disappointment. However, the CUDA cores, the gigaflops, and the power coming from Pascal, the umph if you will, is simply not enough to deliver a pleasant experience, and thus makes ray tracing on GTX a bit pointless at this current time. Should be added. It should also be said that Nvidia has clearly done some impressive work with RTX. There is no denying that these cards are pretty powerful in the end. I also want to add that I think that the 2060 is a bit of a joke in this scenario. It is clearly not powerful enough in the end. I do think it's too slow for it, and Nvidia should also have fitted this card with at least 8GB of RAM. As it looks right now, the list of games supporting fancy rays are less than 5 right now, which doesn't make the whole situation any better. To be frank, ray tracing to me is still pretty boring. We do however know that next generation consoles will be supporting DXR, which will enable developers to implement this feature in many future games, so the future is looking very bright. Lot of rays in all directions. Guys, I'm very interested to know what you think about this. Have you tried ray tracing yet on GTX? Let me know in the comments below. If you're interested in next generation consoles and what they will be like, definitely have a look at my PS5 video I made a few days ago for more info. It's a very interesting video. I'm gonna be back with a brand new video in just a day or two. Until then, have an awesome day, right?